Guys, what's up? We have the brand new information about the new set called Flames of Destruction. This is the set that is offered after Extreme Force and involves cards used by Revolver, Blue Angel and more. The first card is Logic Taurus. This is a Dark Sabers Link 3 Link Monster with 2500 attack, and the link points are between the top, the bottom left and the bottom right. It requires 2 or more effect monsters, and its effect is, if a monster is special summoned to a zone this card points to, banish that monster and as many spell and trap cards on the field as possible, and if you do, inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each of their cards banished by this effect. This card is able to banish back row, which means those that work in the graveyard cannot use their effects. The effect damage is decent, as you could be looking at roughly 1000 or more damage, and does not rely on your opponent to activate this effect. You can simply special summon a monster to either of your zones, banish it at not much cost to you, and get rid of anything the opponent has which you might believe to be a threat. The attack stat is quite usable, as it's at a level that it can protect itself, and the requirements are generic enough to be run within any sort of deck, considering it's only effect monsters that you need. The next card is Death for Dragon. This is a Dark Dragon at level 3 with 1000 attack and 600 defense, and its effect is you can only special summon a card with this card's name with the way written in its first effect once per turn. You can only use this card's name's second effect once per turn. 1. You can special summon this card from your hand by sending one other monster from your hand to the graveyard. 2. If this card is in your graveyard, you can banish 3 monsters with the same name except this card from your graveyard, special summon this card from the graveyard. This card can special summon itself easily by giving up one of your monsters from your hand, and the second effect is quite difficult to use, as getting monsters with the same name can be difficult at the best of times. This card does not fit that well within the deck, however the special summon from the first effect might be enough to see some sort of use. The next card is Background Dragon. This is a Dark Dragon at level 5 with 1600 attack and 1800 defense, and its effect is you can only use this card's name's effect once per turn. 1. If this card is in your graveyard and you control no cards, you can special summon it in defense position, both this card and 1 level 4 or lower dragon monster from your hand, and if you do, banish this card if it leaves the field. This card can bring itself back when you have no cards, as well as reviving another dragon. This means you can bring out a link monster more quickly, especially when combined with Death for Dragon. The next card is Red Reboot. This is a counter trap card that says when your opponent activates a trap card, your opponent cannot activate trap cards for the rest of this turn. Also negate that activation, and if you do, set it on the field. Then your opponent can take 1 trap card from their deck and set it to their spell and trap zone. This card works similar to the Wiretap trap card, however it just sets it back on the field, but the ability to prevent them from activating further trap cards on the turn can stop them from playing their full turn. However, it does give them the opportunity to get whichever trap card they desire and place it into their back row, which can be problematic when facing certain types of decks. The next card is Trickstar Bloom. This is a Link 1 Fairy Link monster. Its attack is 100 and requires a level 2 or lower Trickstar Monster. Its effect is you can only use this card's name's second effect once per turn. If this card is Link summoned, you can activate this effect. Your opponent draws 1 card. 2. If a Trickstar monster this card points to is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can inflict 200 damage to your opponent for each card they have in their hand. This card is very weak for the deck, but it enables your opponent to draw a card. The damage you can force them to take through the second ability could be decent, but it relies on a Trickstar to be destroyed whilst being pointed by this card. It means either you have to force an attack to trigger this effect, or your opponent may be unaware of what this card does, as they will target this card first before going for your linked monsters. The next card is a brand new field spell for them. It's called Trickstar Light Arena. It says you can only use this card name's first effect once per turn. 1. If you link summon a Trickstar Monster, you can target one Trickstar Monster in your graveyard that was used as a material for that summon, special summon it in defense position, but its effects are negated. 2. Once per turn, you can target one set card in your opponent's spell and trap zone. While this card is in the field zone, that set card cannot be activated until the end phase, and your opponent must activate it during the end phase or else return it to the hand. The first effect enables you to bring back a Trickstar used for its summon. This means it can be used as a link material for an additional link summon. As for the second effect, this is a less effective form of light stage, as it can force your opponent to activate a card, but rather it returns it to the hand rather than getting destroyed, which is what light stage does. This field spell is less useful than light stage, as that encourages further effect damage, whilst this works more to get out additional link monsters. In the best scenario, you would want to activate this first to bring out your link monsters, and then proceed to destroy it to bring out light stage to work for the rest of the duel. The next card is Trickstar Shaconage. This is a light fairy level 4 with 1400 attack and 1900 defense. And its effect is, you can only use this card's name's first effect once per turn. 1. You can discard one Trickstar card, then target one Trickstar Link Monster in your graveyard, special summon it. 2. Each time a card is banished from your opponent's graveyard, inflict 200 damage to them for each. This card can bring back a Trickstar Link Monster, which can be useful for their effects. The second effect causes the opponent to take battle damage for each card banished from their graveyard. The problem being there is no direct support for that yet with Trickstars, so you will have to run a specific support in order to benefit from this effect. The next set of cards are supposed to support the Elemental Lords, and we'll start with a new boss monster. It's called Forsorage, the Elemental Lord. This is a light fairy level 8 with 2800 attack and 2200 defense, and its effect is, cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned from your hand by having exactly 5 light monsters in your graveyard. You can only use this card's name's first effect once per turn. 1. When this card is special summoned, you can destroy all monsters your opponent controls. 2. If this face-up card leaves the field, skip the battle phase of your next turn. This is the 5th of the Elemental Lords, with the only one missing currently being a dark version. This has a nice Raigeki effect. However, to get the specific cards into the graveyard can be difficult, but the weakness of this being that the battle phase of your next turn gets skipped when this card leaves the field. Sometimes this isn't particularly much of a weakness, considering that you have spell and traps that you can activate that actually prevent you from going into the battle phase as well. So actually pairing it correctly with this card means it's no longer so much of a downside. The next card is Element Saber Willard. This is a light warrior level 6 with 2400 attack and 2100 defense. And its effect is, you can only use this card's name's first effect once per turn. 1. You can send 2 other monsters from your hand to the graveyard, special summon this card from your hand. 2. While this card is in the monster zone, apply the following to Element Saber and Elemental Lord monsters you control, according to the original attributes of the Element Saber monsters sent to the graveyard to activate this card's effect. So earth or wind, they cannot be destroyed by battle. Water or fire, they cannot be destroyed by card effects. And light and dark, they cannot be targeted by an opponent's card effect. This first effect lets this card be special summoned quickly. The second effect enables you to provide protection to your other Element Saber and Elemental Lord monsters. The better two being the water or fire and light or dark, as this provides near complete protection outside of non-targeting removal. The battle protection can be gained through cards such as Mist Body that already exist within the game, and it's not particularly that important considering that there are buffers. You can use attack increasing cards or other means in order to protect that monster. This means you will need to run a specific attribute support, or if you really feel like a mismatch of cards, you will need a minimum of 5 attributes for each attribute, so at least 30 cards. In this case, you will end up with probably a 60 card deck. The next card is Element Saber Makani. This is a level 2 Wind Warrior with 1,300 attack and 1,200 defense, and its effect is once per turn you can send 1 Element Saber monster from your hand to the graveyard, add 1 Element Saber or Element Lord monster from your deck to your hand, except Element Saber Makani. 2. Once per turn while this card is in your graveyard, you can declare 1 attribute. Until the end of this turn, the attribute of this card in the graveyard becomes the declared attribute. This card is able to search out for one of your Element Saber or Elemental Lord cards, as well as altering its attribute. This is good for graveyard manipulation, as you might have 4 of one attribute, and by using this effect you can meet the summoning conditions of the others. The next card is Element Saber malo'o. This is a level 3 Fire Warrior with 1,700 attack and 200 defense, and its effect is once per turn you can send 1 Element Saber monster from your hand to the graveyard, send 1 Element Saber or Elemental Lord monster from your deck to the graveyard, except Element Saber malo'o. 2. Once per turn while this card is in your graveyard, you can declare 1 attribute. Until the end of this turn, the attribute of this card in the graveyard becomes that declared attribute. This first effect works like a Foolish Burial. This could work to send an Element Saber to alter its attribute, to encourage the summon of an Elemental Lord, or to get rid of one of your Elemental Lords if you have multiple of that card, and you need to meet that exact 5 of the attribute. This can make it work well. As for the second effect, this provides the same attribute manipulation as do the other Element Saber monsters, preventing you from having to run very random attribute support cards. The next card is Element Saber Lapa Villa. This is a level 4 Light Warrior with 400 attack and 2,100 defense, and its effect is once per turn when a spell or trap card is activated as a quick effect, you can send 1 Element Saber monster from your hand to the graveyard, negate that activation, and if you do, destroy it. 2. Once per turn, while this card is in your graveyard, you can declare 1 attribute. Until the end of this turn, the attribute of this card in the graveyard becomes that declared attribute. This card can stop your opponent from activating back row cards, preventing them from continuing with their turn. The second effect is the same graveyard manipulation as the others whilst in the graveyard. The next card is Elemental Training. This is a continuous trap card that says 1. While this card is in the spell and trap card zone, Temple of the Elemental Lords you control cannot be destroyed by card effects and cannot be targeted by your opponent's card effects. 2. Once per turn, you contribute 1 monster special summon from your deck, 1 Element Saber monster with a different original attribute than the attributed monster. 3. You can send this face-up card in the spell and trap card zone to the graveyard, discard your hand, then add Elemental Lord monsters from your graveyard to your hand equal to the number of cards you discarded. Temple, we have Temple of the Elemental Lords is on the field. Temple of the Elemental Lords is the field spell for them. This prevents the card from being destroyed whilst this remains on the field, forcing your opponent to target this card first. Much the same as something like Field Barrier does for generic field spells. The second effect, you can special summon 1 Element Saber with a different attribute, means you can access them more quickly, as well as helping to stack your graveyard. As for the third effect, if you know you have attributes meeting a couple of the summons of the Elemental Lords, By getting rid of this, you can bring them out to your hand and then straight onto the field with their special summon. The next card is Temple of the Elemental Lords. This is a field spell card that says one monster you control gains 200 attack and defense for every different attribute amongst monsters in your graveyard. 2. Once per turn, you can add one element saber monster from your deck to your hand, then skip the battle phase of your next turn. 3. Once per turn, if an element saber monster you control or have in your hand would activate its effect by sending a card from your hand to the graveyard, you can send an elemental saber monster from your deck to the graveyard instead. The first effect can make your monsters gain up to 1200 attack and defense if you can manage all 6 attributes to be sent to the graveyard. The second effect, you can search for an element saber monster, but the problem being that you cannot battle during your next turn. As for the third effect, this can substitute a discard effect by sending the element saber from the deck rather than your hand, preventing you from losing your hand advantage. The next card is Monarch's Re-Advent. This is an equipped spell card that says you can only activate one card with this card's name once per turn. Activate this card by targeting one monster in your graveyard with 2400 attack and 1000 defense, or 2800 attack and 1000 defense. Special summon it in defense position, and if you do, equip this card to it, but that monster's effects are negated. 2. The equipped monster can be treated as 2 tributes for a tribute summon. This card helps to fix some of the Monarch's problems by bringing back a Monarch and making it a 2 tribute card. Therefore, you can bring out some of your stronger Mega Monarchs, especially the Mega Monarchs, whilst meeting their conditions. The final card is Timaton, the Steel Battalion Dragon. This is a Dark Dragon level 4 with 2000 attack and 0 defense, and its effect is cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned by this card's first effect. You can only use this card's name's first effect once per turn. 1. If 3 or more cards are in the same column as quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. 2. If this card is special summoned, destroy all other cards in this card's column. 3. While this card is in the monster zones, unused zones in this card's column cannot be used. In terms of the first effect, this is quite difficult to meet, as your opponent will be aware of column-placed cards, such as with the release of the Mech Knights. The second effect can get rid of up to 3 cards, but it's not likely to work. However, the third effect can be useful to shut down a couple of zones in your opponent's field, but then again, it's still not that relevant. What do you think of these new cards? Which is your favourite? And would you be looking to build an Elemental Lord deck with the new support? What would you like to see from the effect of the Dark Elemental Lord if and when we eventually get it? Leave your comments down below, like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and as always, thank you for taking the time to watch this video.
And